Overlooking the rolling hills from the heights of Lusinga, a ranger known only as Suzuki describes how the rebels paint their faces white and wear red bandanas when they attack. The terrifying sight can make you panic and flee, he says. Suzuki himself survived a militia attack in January. In response to insecurity, the park plans to boost its ranger force from 200 to 500 members over the next 5 years. This sunset lament from usually taciturn guards serves as a reminder that they are still on the front line, risking their lives. One of their comrades has been shot dead in a militia attack. They wait in the fading light to see his body return to base camp one last time and pay their respects. For NPR News, I'm Emmett Livingstone in New Pemba National Park.
Headlines. Russian officials say they have fought off a major Ukrainian drone attack, saying around 70 drones were shot down overnight over Moscow and other western regions. The attack rattled Moscow and halted traffic at 3 of Russia's busiest airports. At least one person was hurt. In Spain, tens of thousands marched in the eastern city of Valencia this weekend, demanding the resignation of the regional president over the handling of the devastating floods that killed more than 200 people. Nearly 80 others remain missing. And today is Remembrance Sunday in the UK. King Charles led the wreath-laying ceremony at London Cenotaph, the memorial that serves as a focal point for honoring the nation's war dead. I'm Giles Snyder, NPR News.
From NPR News, I'm Aisha Roscoe. Exit polls show that Donald Trump again received major support from white Christians this election. The numbers were especially strong among white evangelicals. Trump also made inroads with Hispanic Catholics. And Muslim voters moved away from Democrats, likely due to the Biden-Harris administration's stance in the Israel-Hamas war. Joining us now to talk through some of this data is NPR religion correspondent Jason DeRose. Good morning.
Good morning.
So a big increase in support from Hispanic Christians. What do you know about that?
Well, Aisha, nearly 2/3 of Hispanic Protestants voted for Trump, and a little more than half of Hispanic Catholics voted for him. Now, that's far more than in the past. Back in 2020, about a third of Hispanic Catholics voted for the GOP candidate. That's a big change. These numbers, by the way, Aisha, are from Edison Research, which conducts exit polls for U.S. media.
What do the exit polls say about what motivated these Hispanic Catholics?
Protestants in general, and white Catholics. All of those Christian groups have been a stalwart constituency for Trump. And what's remarkable is how consistent they've been every time he's run. They've stayed with him regardless of his behavior through January 6th, criminal indictments, convictions, civil findings against him regarding sexual assault, and his wavering answer on whether he supports a national abortion ban. Now, one reason to say supporters is that he delivered on overturning Roe v. Wade, and he's talked about empowering Christians in his administration. And one reason he's appealed to white evangelicals is so important is that they're a very politically engaged group. They account for about a quarter of all voters.
We heard so much about Muslim voters in the lead up to the election that Muslim voters would not support Harris because of the Israel-Hamas war. What did we see there?
A national exit poll from CARE, the Council on American Islamic Relations, surveyed nearly 1,600 Muslim voters, and it found Green Party candidate Jill Stein getting 53% of the Muslim vote, with Trump at 21% and Kamala Harris at 20%. Now, let's look at a swing state with a high concentration of Muslim voters. Michigan. CARE also released Michigan-specific survey data. There, Stein did even better than national, and Harris did even worse. So it appears Muslim voters carried through on their threats to punish the Biden-Harris administration. And Anisha, one other data point I think is worth noting. According to these polls, about 80% of Jews voted for Kamala Harris. So Trump's efforts to lure away Jewish voters weren't successful. In fact, few will vote for him this time.
That's NPR religion correspondent Jason DeRose. Thank you so much for joining us.
You're welcome.
Western North Carolina continues to struggle after being hit by the remnants of Hurricane Helene. Compounding the losses is the fact that tourism is down, even in areas ready to welcome people back, as Blue Ridge Public Radio's Lily Knapp reports.
3 weeks after the storm moved through western North Carolina, the town of Franklin held its annual pumpkin roll.
3, 2, 1, roll!
This year, officials crossed their fingers that visitors, also known as leaf lookers, would return for the festival, as October is traditionally the most important month for the region's economy. 13,000 came, which was good, but didn't make up for the loss earlier in the month. Franklin town manager Amy Owens says fall is the town's economic engine.
October is definitely our big month here. We have not only the beautiful mountains and the leaves changing colors, but people start doing their pre-Christmas shopping. And in a tourism economy like we have, October is pretty much make or break month.
To tell tourists that not all the mountains were a disaster zone, the regional marketing organization called Visit Smokies put up billboards that said, "We are open." Photos of the billboards went viral. Mickey Canales with Visit Smokies saw the need for the billboards after seeing only 1,000 people at their visitor center at the beginning of October. They usually see more than 6,000. That's not good for local restaurants and shops, she said.
These businesses are owned by mom and pop. They don't have a corporate backing. And so what will end up inevitably happening is businesses are going to have to close doors.
Right after the storm, she says many local store owners in areas that weren't destroyed got involved in recovery efforts in neighboring counties.
These businesses, they're volunteering, they're donating, they're giving of their own resources as much as possible, but what's happening is you can't pour from an empty cup.
She says in a small survey, 78% of businesses report a significant loss in revenue since the storm. Canales now hopes more visitors will celebrate the upcoming holiday season in the mountains and support local businesses. For NPR News, I'm Lily Knapp in Franklin, North Carolina.
A renowned composer came to talk to us the other day about his score for a big new movie.
I think I probably, altogether, we just probably ruined my career forever.
No. We're going to explain the horrendous. Horrendous is how Hans Zimmer's music for the movie Blitz has been described. But that's exactly what he was going for, trying to capture the feel of nightly bombing raids in World War II London. Hans Zimmer has spent a career making moviegoers feel in the dark of the theater.
and she experienced the whole Blitz, and she would tell me the stories, and they were just stories to me. And Steve said to me, look, watch the movie because you'll understand your mom better. And he was absolutely right. It gave me the idea that one of the things which was so incredibly important, because it really is about George, who is a little boy who wants to find his mother in the chaos of the bombing of London. I said to Steve, look, the only way I know how to do this is to write probably the most unlistenable, most horrific and terrorizing score possible, because I want the grown-ups to feel the way a child would feel. Two choices: fire me in that moment, or give me a big smile. And he said, that's not what I was hoping for. It's very difficult to talk about a movie like this and use the words pleasure, but it was such a pleasure working with Steve and having Steve be around every day, because I was re-experiencing the horror of those times.
When you were setting out to compose this, do you start with like a single sound, a single instrument?
I have a band. I just got back from touring across America, and I know these people in the band very well. There's a very close relationship. They spent their whole life learning how to make their instrument sound beautiful. And it takes a certain amount of courage to go and then turn all that upside down and be saying, here are the notes, but what I want from you is I want them to be like, razors running down a piano wire.
Humility to do that?
No, it takes an enormous amount of courage and commitment. It takes the commitment of going, okay, I am going to play a note that people will not love before. And one way or the other, every artist wants to be loved, But I am going to commit to playing the truth. I'm going to commit to showing the dark side of things.
There are some beautiful and hopeful moments throughout the score.
Absolutely.
One is when George befriends these other young runaways.
Let's play dares. All right. I dare you. I dare you to come onto the roof of the train. Easy. Go on then.
Exactly. But isn't that how kids work? It's like 1 second the world is collapsing, and the next second we see a little red car. We run after the little red cow. There's a puppy there. Our attention span to the beautiful and the horror are equally minimal. It's like, oh wow, it's all an adventure. It's all a play. Like even death in a funny way is a play.
Come up on their boxes.
I don't know. We've been friends for 15, 20 years. There's stuff we talk about says he's my little brother, which is complete crap. He's not my little brother, he's my big brother or my equal brother. We indulge in adventures. We have fun coming up with strange ideas and trying them out and making them work. You know, I mean, it's not that we work really well together. We come up with ideas really, really well together.
Well, I want to congratulate you on your Grammy nomination for Dune Part 2.
Thank you.
Variety reported that the score for that film was submitted for an Academy Award consideration. I guess despite some questions over eligibility, some critics have said that...
Yeah, let me just say something very quickly about that. So, their rule is if you're doing a sequel, a certain percentage has to be new music. So I've done a lot of sequels. I've done the Pirates of the Caribbean sequels forever. So the only thing I keep, of course, is the Jack Sparrow theme. That's the thing that takes us through these things. But Doom Part 2 is not Doom 2. Doom Part 2 is the second half of the same story of the same book. And it would be insane if I started changing the thematic material that I'm developing for the characters. Before I started writing, I knew what the last note was going to be of the second part. Before I started writing the first note of the first part, because there has to be, just like the author had a story arc, the music has to have a story arc. To disqualify us for doing something which is artistically correct seems a little odd if you're trying to actually encourage people to look at movies and be daring about how you make them.
And I am fascinated by the fact that you say from before you write the first note, you know the last note.
You have to know what you have to aim for. You have to know where you want the story to go and how you want to go that way.
That is incredible. I have to ask you, because you've been doing this for so long, you have more than 200 composing credits, how do you continue to push yourself creative? How do you not get burned out or jaded or just tired?
I'm tired. Oh, trust me, I'm really tired. I literally got off this tour and the next day had a root canal.
Oh no.
It's been pretty full on, but, you know, as far as I remember back, I mean, before I could speak, before I had language, I had music. There's so few people whose dreams come true, and with this playfulness, with this playful music, I get to go and communicate with the whole world.
That's Academy Award winner and Blitz composer Hans Zimmer. The new film is out in select theaters and streams later this month on Apple TV+. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. What a good conversation.
This is Weekend Edition from NPR News. I'm Aisha Roscoe.
Support for NPR comes from this station and from Viking, dedicated to creating travel experiences for the thinking person, with programs designed for cultural enrichment on board and on shore. Learn more at Viking.com. From Hiscox, committed to helping small businesses protect their dreams. Quotes and information on customized insurance for specific risks are available at Hiscox.com. Hiscox, business insurance experts. And from listeners like you, who donate to this NPR station.
Philbrook Museum of Art presents the next installment of their ongoing Music on Exhibit concert and discussion series led by Philbrook curator Susan Green and musicologist Jason Heilman, pairing artworks from the special exhibition American Artists and American Stories with live chamber music. There'll be music by Rodgers and Hammerstein, George Gershwin, Leonard Bernstein, Aaron Copland, Amy Beach, and more. The event takes place Sunday, November 10th at 2:30. Information at philbrook.org/calendar.
On an island off the coast of Alaska, wolf trapping season is just beginning. Residents want to hunt wolves to protect the vital deer population. Scientists worry that culling too many could have serious impacts on the island's ecology.
Anytime a predator-prey system gets out of balance, there's a risk.
That story on All Things Considered, NPR News.
This afternoon at 4 on Public Radio 89.5.
Support for Public Radio Tulsa building affordable housing in partnership with families for over 35 years. Information about how home ownership can become a reality for more Tulsans at greencountryhabitat.org.
The listener-supported service of the University of Tulsa, Public Radio 89.5, AWGS HD1, Tulsa.
Sometime in the last couple of years, America's collective morning routine shifted. We used to start the day with coffee. Now, it's coffee and work, or spelling bee, or both, plus the crossword. We're living in a golden age of word games, which is fun and one way to get just a tiny bit of relief when the world feels out of control.
I love that the crossword puzzle is almost like a miniaturized Oxford English dictionary. You can see the evolution not just of the constructor, but of language.
I'm Anne Strange Hampson today, and to the best of our knowledge, thank goodness for puzzles and their creators. Because even when 14 across is the stupidest, most maddening clue you have ever seen, it still made your day a little bit better. This hour, playing with words. First this.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Louise Schiavone. President Trump's sweep of the 7 swing states is now complete. The Associated Press called Arizona for Trump last night. With the state's electoral votes, Trump is expected to finish with 312 electoral votes. Kamala Harris won 226. Party officials and political analysis of all kinds continue to look at the results of the November 5th vote and the reasons for the final outcome. Senator Bernie Sanders, an independent from Vermont, spoke to CNN's State of the Union. He says a lot of the outcome is due to the economy.
Look, the Biden administration has done a lot of good things, period. We should all be proud of that. But it has to be put in the broad context of the reality of the American economy today. And that is when you have 3 people on top owning more wealth than the bottom half of American society. When you have millions and millions of people working for starvation wages, you got to speak to that reality.
Senator Bernie Sanders of Vermont. Congress returns to Washington this week. Newly elected members of the next Congress arrive for orientation, and parties in both chambers elect leaders to reflect the coming shift in power. NPR's Deirdre Walsh reports.
Senate Republicans picked up at least 3 seats and will elect a majority leader on Wednesday to begin implementing President-elect Trump's agenda in January. Mitch McConnell, the current GOP leader, is stepping down. There is a 3-way race between South Dakota Senator John Thune, Texas Senator John Cornyn, and Florida Senator Rick Scott. Results in many House races are still pending. Republican leaders say they're confident they will keep their narrow majority, but House Democrats aren't ceding anything yet. Speaker Mike Johnson is expected to gain another term during the GOP closed-door election on Wednesday. Deirdre Walsh, NPR News, Washington.
Israel's ousted Defense Minister Yoav Gallant says there's nothing more for the Israeli military to achieve in Gaza. That is according to a closed-door meeting he had with family members of Israeli hostages in Gaza on his last day in office. NPR's Kat Lonsdorf spoke with one of the family members in that meeting.
Gil Dickman's cousin was taken hostage by Hamas last October, along with about 250 others. She was later killed in Gaza. Dickman says Gallant spoke plainly about the war at Thursday's meeting.
And what he said is that there's so much that you can do with force, and they've done it.
He says Gallant also said that Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu is solely responsible for holding up a ceasefire deal in July. NPR has been able to independently verify Dickman's account of the meeting, with both a recording and a transcript. We also reached out to both Gallant and the Prime Minister's office. Neither responded. Netanyahu fired Gallant last week, saying trust between the two had, quote, eroded. Kat Lonsdorf, NPR News, Tel Aviv.
This is NPR. New York State police say a firefighter died battling one of multiple wildfires burning there and in New Jersey amid extremely dry conditions. The forest ranger reportedly died when a tree fell on him yesterday. Judith Jamison has died. She was a principal dancer for the Alvin Ailey Dance Theater, as well as its artistic director for 21 years. Jeff London reports Jamison died yesterday at the age of 81 following a brief illness.
Born in Philadelphia, Judith Jamison excelled in dance from an early age. She came to New York to perform with the American performances Ailey created for her was a solo called Cry, which the choreographer dedicated to all black women everywhere, especially our mothers. Jamison also appeared on Broadway and as a guest artist with many dance companies. After Ailey died in 1989, Jamison took over the company. For NPR News, I'm Jeff London in New York.
The annual UN Climate Summit, this one COP29, gets underway tomorrow in Azerbaijan, an oil and gas producing nation on the Caspian Sea. Diplomats from around the world will discuss increasing threats linked to climate change and how to address them. Azerbaijan has come under fire from multiple organizations challenging its recognition of climate change perils and its commitment to a green energy transition. I'm Louise Schiavone, NPR News, Washington.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include the Walton Family Foundation, working to create access to opportunity for people and communities by tackling tough social and environmental problems. More information is at waltonfamilyfoundation.org.
It's To the Best of Our Knowledge. I'm Anne Strainchamps, and today's show is all about puzzles. I want to do one of your games.
Well, thank you for asking.
Do you have a puzzle?
I do. Well, one thing we love to do is, it's a podcast, so we try to lean into the audio and have audio puzzles for your ears, like Wordle for your ears.
This is A.J. Jacobs, a journalist known for turning his research into obsessive lifestyle experiments. And one of his latest fascinations, which includes a new podcast, is puzzles.
There's a famous genre of puzzles called rebuses. A word is written in a certain way, or you might have the word grass written in green typeface. So the answer would be grew grass.
Okay, got it.
So it's a word that is a clue to a phrase. So we have sort of the audio version of that. We call it earbus instead of rebus. I say a word in a certain tone or accent, and you have to guess the phrase.
Okay.
So if I said tide, then that is rising tide. That's the example. Rising tide.
Okay, yes.
All right, so I'll give you a couple of examples and see if you can come up with a two-word phrase.
Slow motion.
There it is. Exactly.
Okay.
What about this one? Banana.
Banana split.
Hey, I like it. See, I saw the aha moment when you did it. You're like, I got it.
But I know you're going easy on me. Give me a real one.
Well, all right. I'll give you a couple that are more medium.
Okay.
This one might be hard just because I'm not a great actor. Try this one. Dressing.
French dressing.
Hey, you got it. You got it.
I couldn't decide if that was a French or a German accent. There's no German dressing.
We'll see, yeah, as I told you. What about this one? What about chamber?
Oh, echo chamber.
Exactly. How about this one? Chairs.
Musical chairs.
There it is. You are nailing them.
This is so good for my ego. Keep going.
How about birds? Birds.
Oh, no, I don't know. Yelling birds, shouting birds.
Yeah. What emotion are you having when you might be yelling?
Angry birds.
Angry birds. Exactly. it's a mixed blessing for me because I cannot start my day before doing like 5 puzzles.
Oh my god.
Yeah, it's a problem, but a good problem. If I'm gonna have an addiction, it's the one I want. And as to your question, what happened? Certainly the pandemic was a golden age for puzzles, and there is some historical evidence that the Depression, for instance, was a time when jigsaws really became a phenomenon.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, when times get tough, people turn to puzzles.
Right.
Which actually kind of makes sense. I'm fast forwarding to psychological effects of puzzles, but one theory you uncovered is that, well, puzzles give us this little momentary feeling that the world makes sense, that you solve the puzzle, you do the logical thing, and yeah, it's an illusion of control in a chaotic world.
Yeah, exactly. It's this idea of making order out of chaos. Our life is filled with puzzles that don't have a clear answer, but these puzzles that we create do. So you get that dopamine rush, you get that feeling of closure. You're like, I solved a puzzle. And then you can go on with your messy, chaotic day, having at least accomplished that.
Yeah, but you've had this little window of control.
Right.
So you sound like somebody else I know, my husband Steve Paulson, who will not get out of bed in the morning before he's done Wordle, spell and bee, and connections, which I sometimes say to stop procrastinating. You're just delaying the minute you finally have to get up and get out of bed. But I think that that's not really doing him or puzzles justice. It seems like there's actually a pretty rich psychology or neuroscience here.
Yes, well, that was one of the points of my book, is that puzzles are not a vice. So when I said they were earlier, I take it back. The idea is, and I think
maybe they're both.
There you go, exactly. Everything can be both good and bad, but they have so many advantages. There is some evidence that they help with the brain because you are keeping it stimulated, but it's not just puzzles. You can do the same thing by learning a new instrument or learning a new language. For me, what puzzles provide is this sense of curiosity. The puzzle mindset is what I call it. And this is the idea that to always be looking around the world as if it's a big puzzle. And how can we solve it? How can we improve it? And I'll tell you, it's been so crucial during this very stressful political time, because when I'm talking to someone from the other side of the political spectrum, instead of trying to have a fact battle with them or just pummel them, I view it as a puzzle. And I say, the puzzle is, why do I believe what I believe, and why does this person believe what they believe? And what can we do about it? What evidence can I present or she can present to change our minds? And is there anything we can do if we still don't agree? Is there anything productive we can do that we can agree on? It's much more like a cooperative adventure instead of this ugly competition. And it makes it much less stressful and, I believe, more productive.
So this is like your puzzle theory of democracy?
Yes.
Puzzles make us a more civic-minded people?
I'm not kidding. Democracy is the ultimate puzzle.
There has to be some neuroscience here, right? There has to be something going on in the brain that also makes puzzles really attractive to us. Like my theory, for instance, is that every time when I'm doing a crossword and I get a word right, I get a little dopamine hit. It is literally addictive, which is why I think it can be hard to tear yourself away. If I finish one crossword and there's a little part of me that thinks, maybe I could just do another one before I get to work.
There you go. I think your theory is 100% correct. I think the scientists I talk to will agree that our brains are wired for puzzles and to get that dopamine hit, because it started with puzzles of things like, how do I find something to eat? How do I use this stick to get the ants out of the anthill? How do I escape my predators? These are the kinds of puzzles we started with, and that's where we develop this dopamine hit. When you solve a puzzle and come up with a good
puzzle you did that you just really enjoyed?
Oh, what I love is now I have a daily podcast and I love writing the puzzles almost more than doing them. And I'll give you an example. I just love seeing puzzles everywhere. I read fiction at night because it relaxes me. I was reading Charles Dickens' Great Expectations and I saw the word moped. And I was like, what? They didn't have mopeds in 18th, 19th century London. But then I realized, oh no, it's moped. Moped. It was not moped. And then I was like, oh, well that is fun. Are there other words where you can have the same exact spelling but have it pronounced differently? And I came up with a whole list, like mole and mole. Mole, the chocolate sauce. And I created a puzzle out of that and it was just super fun. Because
Wait, how does the puzzle go?
the clue would be something like, this is a spy inside a factory that makes chocolate sauce for Mexican food.
Oh, that's good. Mole.
A mole. And I had a bunch of them. Some of them used the accent. Here's one I actually didn't use. I saw it after. Actress Leone's hot beverage. And that would be Tia Leone tea. So that to me is almost more fun than solving puzzles because I just feel so creative and energized and I love spotting them in the wild.
So that kind of brings us to another side of puzzling, and that's the painful part. You know, a puzzle has to be just hard enough that it challenges you, but you can still do it. But there are lots and lots of puzzles that are unbelievably frustrating and unpleasant. Pretty much anything I can't do, I don't want to do. So math puzzles, I just look at them and think, But I think some people do. I mean, you might be one of these, really enjoy the kind of psychological pain of puzzling.
I have learned to enjoy it more. And you're right, there is a sweet spot. You want some frustration before you get the aha moment. Because otherwise, you haven't earned it. You don't get the dopamine hit unless there is a little bit of struggle. Now, how much struggle? That is a personal taste question. There are people in the puzzle community who are amazing. There's this one puzzle called Cryptos, and it's a sculpture at the CIA that has a secret code. It's 35 years old, and it hasn't fully been solved, and people are still going at it. Can you imagine the aha moment when they get it in 50 years? I don't have the patience to do it 35 years, but I have extended my patience, and part of that is I did a wonderful interview with this guy who they call the godfather of Sudoku, Akikaji, and he had a wonderful way of thinking about puzzles. He wrote it on the whiteboard in pen. He just wrote question mark, forward arrow, exclamation point. Just those three symbols. And he said that represents every puzzle.
That's good.
Because you get there, you're baffled, and then the forward arrow is working through it. The exclamation point is that aha moment. And
AJ, that's the symbol for life.
well, there you go. I agree. Well, he said that too, yeah. And the key, what I thought was so beautiful, is that he said you have to learn to enjoy that arrow. That arrow, sometimes you're never going to get to that exclamation point. And I just found that a much more poetic way than saying it's all about the journey, not the destination. To me, it's all about that arrow, not the exclamation point. And I would make one slight tweak to his wonderful metaphor, which is that arrow is not a straight arrow. The arrow is like a curlicue all over the place because it's rarely that you get from the question mark straight to the exclamation point. You have to go on a journey.
What about in my natural territory of word puzzles? What do you think are the hardest?
Well, some of the hardest are these British cryptics. It's sort of the British style of crossword puzzles. And American crossword puzzles originally were much more trivial. Like, this is the main river of Bulgaria. And they have become a little more wordplay oriented, partly because of Will Short's New York Times, partly because of Stephen Sondheim, weirdly, who wrote about British cryptic puzzles in the 60s and brought them to America.
What are they?
Well, they are super tricky
Public Radio Tulsa is provided by the founders of the Shining Honor Project, enriching the lives of those with developmental challenges while honoring our nation's veterans. Meet and learn about Honor Team members at shininghonor.org/stories.
Public Radio 89.5, KWGS HD1, Tulsa. National Public Radio in HD from the University of Tulsa.
We left you with a British cryptic puzzle. Not the easiest thing to solve. So let's get A.J. Jacobs back to sort it.
It's all a play. It's sort of a rebus. You know, a rebus is where you have to look at it from a completely new angle. So think about GETS. What if you rearrange those letters? What might come up?
Eggs?
Yes, eggs. So you're like, oh, okay, so eggs, but it's two words. So what's the first one? It's not rearranged eggs. It's not
broken.
Not broken eggs.
Broken, fried, poached, scrambled.
Scrambled eggs. So there you go. That's the kind of wordplay that they feature in these cryptics, and it's even more complicated than that. I can't even go into it because it would take like 10 minutes to explain the rules. And it's an acquired taste. A lot of people hate them, but I have grown to love them.
I remember you talking to some guy, I can't remember who it was, who was introducing you to these British cryptics, and who said, these things are so sadistic. They're like invasive. They just move into your life and take your life over, which it did make me think, there might be kind of a sadistic side of puzzling, at least for the puzzle makers.
Yes.
You know, sometimes you feel like they're being kind of mean.
Right, it is interesting. I do think you have a little sadism. Too much sadism is bad, because you want the person to solve it in the end and have that aha moment. But you do want them to have the pain, otherwise that aha moment is not going to be as pleasurable. And I will say, since I have a puzzle podcast, I think my weakness is I'm not sadistic enough. I don't like to have people twisting in the wind.
Well, especially if it's in real time on your podcast,
That's
where
right.
people are just, no, that's mean. I wish you get to do that in private.
Exactly. So I am, some puzzlers say I'm too easy with the hints. But like you said, this is a real-time audio podcast. You don't want to hear someone silent for 2 minutes as they...
We'll call you the
frustrate.
compassionate puzzler.
What a lovely idea. Thank you.
So what is the most hellish puzzle you ever encountered?
Oh, that's a great question. Well, there are puzzles that are literally impossible to solve.
What, like nobody's ever solved them?
Yes, and for various reasons. Some of them are just, these are codes that have not been cracked, and sometimes they are so time-consuming that it's impossible to solve. There's this one genre called generation puzzles, and they are called that because you have to pass them down from generation to generation.
Oh my God, you're kidding. So
No.
like your grandfather's dying and bequeaths you the puzzle he never solved?
Exactly. And these are physical puzzles. They are like the Chinese ring puzzles. And what it is you have to move the rings in a certain way to solve it, but it's an exponential problem. So if you have 50 rings and you move one every second, it'll literally take you billions of years to solve. And as part of my book, I thought I'm going to make the ultimate generation puzzle. So I created this one with a Dutch puzzle designer called Jacob's Tower, and you have to turn these little knobs and try to get out a steel rod. And if you do it 1 per second, the universe will die of a heat death before you solve it. So I'd say that was one of the worst puzzles ever created. But
I don't even know if that qualifies as a puzzle. Is a puzzle really something that cannot be solved?
Well, there you go. I mean, this I did just as a reminder that we do have to enjoy the arrow sometimes. You've got to enjoy the solving. Because there are two parts to solving a puzzle. There's the aha moment where you figure out the key. And you're like, oh, I see. These are all anagrams solving the puzzle. So there's a genre of puzzles called puzzle boxes, which are these beautiful, they started in Japan, beautiful boxes, and you have to move all of these little parts of the box, and you spin them, and you turn them upside down, and the idea is to open them. Now, a bad puzzle box would be that you work on it, get nothing, and then 2 hours later you open it. A good puzzle box is every 5 minutes you're able to open a tiny part that leads to another part, because you want these aha moments spread throughout. You don't want start, then nothing, and then the aha moment. All right, there's one. All right, this is a type of puzzle. You've probably heard of charades, probably played it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
I'm not good at that either, but okay.
Well, the original charades was not acted out. It was a literary form where it would be clues to parts of words. So that's where charades comes from. You break down the word into syllables and give clues to those syllables, and then you put them together. It would be, for instance, the clue might be a word heard on Halloween plus something that goes with lemon curd. That kind of rhymes, but it didn't happen. A word heard on Halloween, so break it down.
So let's say boo.
Boo, exactly. Plus something that goes with lemon curd, often in a pie.
Whipped cream? Ice cream?
Something, lemon something pie, lemon something.
Oh God, I'm not even getting the example.
Lemon.
Meringue?
Yes. Okay, now put those two together.
Boomerang!
Boomerang. Okay. Exactly. So there, that's it. Here, you want another? How about?
Yes, give me one more.
All right. I like it. And by the way, that was not bad. That was not the example. That was the total. How about no blank, no fuss? This is a three-parter. No blank, no fuss, plus blank and caboodle, plus blood, sweat, and blank. Break it down. Both blank and fuss.
That's no muss, no fuss.
So muss is the first.
Muss, okay.
Blank and caboodle.
Kit and caboodle.
Yep. So muss, kit,
mess kit. Muss kit, okay.
And
I
then
got
blood, sweat, and
tears.
right.
Musketeers!
Musketeers! Exactly. So that's it. That is another game we play. And that goes back to the 1700s France. And Jane Austen used charades in her books, so it's got a nice long history.
Oh, I just feel like, yeah, I could have tea with Jane Austen now and hold my own. This is great. Thank you.
My pleasure.
Yeah. AJ, this was so much fun. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. I had a great time.
That is the inimitable AJ Jacobs, author of The Puzzler and host of the Puzzler podcast. And to give you an idea of just how obsessive AJ could get, his most recent book is The Year of Living Constitutionally, in which he tries to get inside the mind of America's founders by adhering as closely as possible to the original meaning of the U.S. Constitution in his daily life, which turns out to be really hard to do. Next, New Yorker crossword constructor Anna Sheckman remembers the moment when puzzles changed her life.
I first learned that there are actual humans behind crossword puzzles when I was 15 years old and I saw the documentary film Wordplay. It's about crossword puzzle construction and also crossword lovers and fans. There's a constructor named Merle Regal, brilliant constructor who sits down at his desk in Tampa, Florida. And just starts plotting out a grid on graph paper. the desire to kind of control and tame language into this very orderly 15 by 15 grid, and the desire to control my body, seemed like they were motivated by a similar metaphysical desire, right? To be this kind of pure brain off stick. And that was, at the time, a kind of ideal state for me. And I think also how to manifest something like control in a world that was completely out of my control. Sometimes I've talked to people who are coders or mathematicians, and they understood this kind of physical sensation I've described when you're writing a crossword puzzle, especially if you're doing it on grid paper, as I was. You're focusing so hard on the string of letters and how to sort of tear them apart and build them back up until they're meaningful words again. Something about that level of focus was actually kind of soothing, almost like a coping mechanism for any sensation of fullness that I didn't want. Now, of course, crossword puzzles, it is still light and in many ways salutary. There are all sorts of benefits of it. Of course, can never say that about anorexia nervosa.
Anna Scheckman and the Feminist History of Crosswords. Next. I'm Anne Straight-Champs. It's To the Best of Our Knowledge from Wisconsin Public Radio at PRX.
Hey, it's Francis Lamb, host of The Splendid Table. This week, we talk comfort food from around the world, the beloved Yotam Ottolenghi, and we learn about classic German cooking with the wonderful Louisa Weiss. It's coming up on The Splendid Table.
This afternoon at 2 on Public Radio 89.5.
Support for Public Radio Tulsa is provided by the founders of the Shining Honor Project, enriching the lives of those with developmental challenges while honoring our nation's veterans. Meet and learn about Honor Team members at shininghonor.org/stories.
Public Radio 89.5, KWGS HD1 Tulsa. National Public Radio in HD from the University of Tulsa.
Doing a crossword puzzle might seem like a great way to escape from the world. Just sharpen a pencil and forget all about politics and wars and headlines. But crosswords are never apolitical. And a new generation of puzzle constructors is pushing to make today's crosswords more socially and linguistically inclusive. Among them, Anna Scheckman at The New Yorker. She writes about gender and puzzle making in a new memoir called Riddles of the Sphinx, inheriting the feminist history of the crossword puzzle. She told Shannon Henry Kleiber it's probably not an accident that her career in crosswords coincided with her recovery from anorexia.
What's strange is that for the first few years of writing puzzles, I was writing them essentially for no one. It was almost like part of my convalescence as an ill child. I was just writing them to pass the time and to test my own intelligence in a way. And it wasn't until I got to college that my first boyfriend, my college boyfriend, thought, you can publish these. It had literally never occurred to me. I made some for him or for friends as gifts. And so I sent a couple of puzzles to Shorts, and he was...
That's Will Shorts.
Will Shorts,
We should explain. I know a lot of our listeners will know who he is, but he's the famous...
He's the long-term crossword puzzle editor of the New York Times. He started editing there in 1993.
Yeah, you sent him puzzles, and he was receptive.
Well, more than receptive, he has really mentored teenage constructors, partially because he was a teenage constructor. And he emailed me back right away and said, if we rush, because I was 19, we can get you in this pantheon of teenage constructors. And so he really helped me improve those early grids and rush these two puzzles out.
I actually wonder, I would love to watch how your crossword puzzles changed.
Oh, they've
how
changed
you changed
dramatically.
You
Yeah,
can
they're-
probably
I mean,
track
because
your own personal history through the puzzles you
Totally.
create.
Every puzzle is an index of its maker, and her fixations and preoccupations and joys. And it's funny because I remember when I first started writing puzzles, I think I imagined that much of the work was just tearing these words apart and building them back up, and that they maybe didn't have very much to do with the meaning of the words at all. Just getting them to cross was hard enough. But you're completely right that if you go through the puzzles that I've written, I now write them for The New Yorker, but I wrote them for The Times for many years, that you could probably see, I'm certain you could, my sort of interests develop and maybe even my personality.
One of the things I thought was so fascinating is that you have introduced words that no other crossword puzzle constructor has introduced. Some of these words were vine ripe, and what else? What are some of these words that you have introduced that no one else had used in a puzzle before?
Yeah. So in The Times, some early words that I introduced, vine rape, gay anthem. I tried to get the term male gaze into the puzzle. That one was, I lost that battle with shorts.
Because it wasn't puzzle-worthy?
At the time, yeah, it wasn't understood to be puzzle-worthy, which is, I should say, after I graduated from college, my first job was being Will Short's assistant at the Times, which was a completely fabulous first job, but very strange. I went up to his home office in Westchester, New York. We sat at his desk and we re-clued or wrote new clues for up to 95% of the words in every crossword puzzle, which meant just a tremendous amount of basically free associating together. You know, I was a 23-year-old from Lower Manhattan, and he was in his 60s from rural Indiana, so you can imagine that our frames of reference and also our sense of what is puzzle-worthy would be really different. And it ends up being a quite political question, because it has to do with who is your imagined audience for the puzzle. And I remember Will was very explicit about this. He wanted the puzzle to be as inclusive as possible, but what that meant for him at the time, and I know it's evolved since then, was that he wanted as many people to be able to solve the puzzle as possible. And so, as a result, he didn't want to include words that, you know, at the time he called niche, and that always, you know, sort of stabbed me in the heart, right? Because it basically meant words that were marked by various subcultures. Queer culture, black culture, women's culture, yeah.
If you take away some of those, then there's a whole part of the world you're not inclusive to.
Exactly, yeah. And as I say, I think that his sense of what inclusivity means has changed. But, you know, with some of my peers in the cross world, as we sometimes say, I've actually compiled a variety of lists of words that have, whether it's at the Times or at other mainstream daily publications or newspapers, words that have been deemed niche or unpuzzle-worthy. So,
what are some of those words?
Yeah, words like matcha tea or garter stitch or SNCC, SNCC.
Those are such interesting examples, because my kids, who are Gen Z, are all about matcha tea.
Yeah.
And garter stitch is all about my mother's generation. And SNCC is about, you know, the 1960s, I think. Completely different generations, time periods. But you think that maybe people from other subcultures might not get to them. But it's kind of part of the challenge too, to keep that all together.
Yeah, and a lot of the ones that didn't make the list or didn't make them into puzzles would be proper names. So Laverne Cox, Gucci Mane, an entire crossword puzzle based around the idea of WNBA teams, right? And once you start to see these words on the page, you can see a pattern develop, which is that they tend to come from non-white cultures. Marie Kondo is another one, right? They tend to come